Over the last few decades, the state of California has experienced many natural disasters, catastrophes that have taken many lives and cost the state billions of dollars. In its latest report, the alcohol industry watchdog Marin Institute found that the annual problem of alcohol-related harms in California comes with a shockingly similar price tag. In this report titled The Annual Catastrophe of Alcohol in California, we investigated harms like injury, illness, accidents, and deaths caused by alcohol. Much to our surprise, we found that this catastrophe is costing our state over $38 billion every year.
We thought it was important to compare the costs of alcohol in California to natural disasters that we're more familiar with. And as it turns out, the total cost, $38 billion price tag for alcohol, is roughly equivalent to having a Northridge-style earthquake every year. And of course, natural disasters come along once in a while, but our problems with alcohol happen every year.
In 1989, the Loma Prieta earthquake hit the San Francisco Bay Area, causing $9.3 billion in damages. The 1991 Oakland firestorm destroyed hundreds of homes at a price tag to the state of $3.3 billion. And in 1984, the devastating Northridge earthquake that hit the Los Angeles area cost Californians $40.1 billion. Alcohol-related health problems make up $15.6 billion of the total annual alcohol cost to California. The disturbing array of ailments range from liver disease to cancer to sexually transmitted diseases. To get a sense of the everyday reality of the impact alcohol has on healthcare costs, we visited the emergency room at San Francisco General Hospital.
For us, it would be the number one complicating factor in patients that we see with both illness and injury-related problems. Not only do we see many patients who come who have injuries related to automobile crashes, pedestrians struck by intoxicated drivers, bicyclists struck by intoxicated drivers killing themselves or injuring themselves really severely. And these are extremely common. In fact, if you looked at the nature of all of our trauma here, alcohol would be a very significant component in probably, up to half of our patients.
Not uncommon for me to take care of the same patient coming in by ambulance. San Francisco Fire Department will bring in the same patient by ambulance more than 2 times a day sometimes. And I mean, sadly for that patient, they have a seizure threshold that's affected by alcoholism, and they'll seize out in the street, sometimes more than once a day, and of course may require emergency care.
When I've worked in the emergency room myself, or when doctors talk to us, one of the major problems is how many people are in the emergency room because they're inebriated. And often they're so inebriated that they require extensive tests because we're worried that perhaps they've fallen, perhaps they have a bleed in their head, so they get extensive medical evaluations because they are so inebriated that they can't tell us what hurts.
I mean, people who come in intoxicated, who haven't been taking their drugs for their heart problems or their diabetes, come in often with, really significant complications from their basic illness problems because they aren't paying attention to what they're supposed to be doing with their drug management. The cost goes on from there to rehabilitation of the patients, to job loss, to family disruption, to enormous interpersonal problems and psychiatric issues. So this cost is really beyond comprehension in reality if you really look at what the toll of alcohol is on our society.
The Marin Institute study is the first of its kind. Never before has any one agency calculated the complete cost of alcohol to the state. Ted Miller of the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation is a co-author of the study. In his previous research, he found that a long list of crimes can be attributed to alcohol, including assaults, rapes, robberies, larceny, and child sexual abuse. Simon Rosen, Marin Institute research analyst and co-author of this study, believes this information could play a crucial role changing alcohol policy in the state.
And other studies have looked at estimating the cost in other countries across the world. There's been studies in Canada, the UK, France. But up until now, there's not been any overall study in individual states. So we looked to bridge that gap by conducting the first study in California.
Marin Institute's Research and Policy Director, Michelle Simon.
We thought it was really important to describe the full depth of this problem. Most people just think of alcohol as a personal problem, right? Many of us have experienced it with family members, perhaps suffering from alcoholism, or maybe having a teen with some alcohol problems. But the truth of the matter is this is a much broader problem than one that just happens in families. And so by placing a price tag on it, by totaling up the number of deaths, the number of incidents, what we're saying is this is a problem that is felt by everyone in California in some way or another. Whether or not you're personally affected by it, you're certainly affected by it on an economic level, on a societal level, and that's what's so important about bringing these numbers to light.
There was a couple of really surprising things when doing this research. I think the first one was just how large a role alcohol plays in crime, and in so many different types of crime. If you just look at surveys of people in prisons and you look at surveys of people when they're arrested, the number of crimes that are committed while people are intoxicated is quite unbelievable. Number of murders, assaults, rapes, which are fueled by alcohol use was really quite shocking. I think the other thing was just how large the actual cost is. It's hard to really get a hold of what $38 billion really means.
We decided to compare alcohol use in California to another health issue that gets a lot more attention, and that's tobacco. Well, it turns out that tobacco is more lethal than alcohol. However, because alcohol causes so many other problems in addition to illness, such as traffic crashes and crimes, alcohol actually costs California roughly twice that of tobacco.
According to this study, over 9,000 people die in California every year from causes that can be directly attributed to alcohol, whether through injury, violent crime, traffic collisions, or alcohol-related illness. That is an average of one person every hour, day in, day out. Suhan LeMay and her husband Tom may never recover from the loss of their only son in an alcohol-related crash. In 2005, 19-year-old Alex died in an accident that occurred while he was a passenger in a car driven by a friend. The boys were driving home from a party where they both had been drinking.
I got the dreaded call. Every parent's worst nightmare. I was thinking, oh my goodness, what if he's paralyzed? What if he's on life support? I don't want to have to make that decision. And I didn't really want to go towards the fact that he might be gone already, but when we got to the hospital, we learned that he was already gone.
Any day that seems like a good day and you're happy and smiling, you just think of Alex and it washes it all away. It's gone. I don't know what else to say about this besides I miss my son, and the hardest thing is knowing he can't come home, and it's because of alcohol.
This $38 billion estimate is very conservative. Lost productivity, time away from work, and reduced earnings make up the largest portion of the total at $22 billion.
The effect it's had on me is it's made me a sad man. I can't imagine how to keep going, because when somebody dies at the age of 19 or younger, I mean any child, it's that kind of loss is something that just doesn't go away. It just doesn't.
We also have intangible cost, what we call quality of life. This accounts for the pain and suffering endured by the victims and family of victims of alcohol-related illness, injury, and crime. These costs total an additional $49 billion. The pain and suffering experienced by these victims is often very private, but it affects a tremendous portion of California's residents. Unlike many victims, Sue has channeled her grief into outspoken advocacy, working to stop the epidemic of harms caused by underage drinking. She takes her son's ashes when speaking to young people and community gatherings. It is a powerful and unforgettable reminder of the devastating effects alcohol can have on a family.
Talking to parents, sometimes I'm talking to students, sometimes I'm talking to both. And so when I say, hey, I'd like you to meet my son Alex, you can hear the gasps. And I hold the alcohol industry too partially responsible. My son did drink, but they were infusing our culture long before he was even born.
It is safe to say that nearly everyone in California has been impacted by alcohol in some way. There are many illnesses directly caused or considered alcohol-related, including psychosis, breast cancer, chronic hepatitis, epilepsy, psoriasis, prostate cancer, and fetal alcohol syndrome.
To fund alcohol.
California Assemblyman Jim Bell of San Jose is the parent of a developmentally disabled child. His day-to-day experiences of dealing with that problem have made him a champion of alcohol control legislation in the state.
Drinking and the pregnancy causes these fetal alcohol syndrome kids. A lot of them end up in our criminal justice system, and really if you add it all up, it's about $2 million the cost of society per fetal alcohol syndrome birth. And many of those kids die. Many of them have ongoing, permanent developmental disabilities. It's the leading cause of developmental disabilities. 1,000 fetal alcohol syndrome babies born in California. $400 million is the cost. That's a pretty high price tag to ignore. I think we have to do something about it.
Back at San Francisco General Hospital, alcohol problems are so significant there are emergency units dedicated to picking up patients who overuse ambulances. Captain Tangerlini drives such a unit.
Of the clientele that we're dealing with, of the several hundred people we deal with, probably about 75 to 80% are chronic inebriates. They may have other problems, and they build up lots of other problems, but about 75 to 80% are chronic inebriates. Then last year there was a study that looked at 225 frequent users of the ambulance who were also identified as chronic inebriates because they had been chronically seen at our sobering center, and their cost last year to General Hospital, uncompensated charges, was $12.9 million in 1 year.
While cities and counties pick up the tab for services like this, the alcohol industry is making enormous profits in California. It's the largest alcohol market in the United States. In 2005 alone, alcohol sales in the state are estimated at $19.5 billion. That represents more than 800 million gallons. Yet, the industry pays only $318 million in excise tax to the state. That is less than 1% of the cost of the problems caused by alcohol. One crucial policy change that may come out of this report is a tax increase. As Michelle Simon explains, per every drink consumed in California, it costs $2.80 in harm.
Our current tax rates in California average about 8 cents per drink, which is clearly not even close to enough to cover the costs associated with alcohol use in California. And that's why one of our recommendations is to increase the excise taxes on alcohol in California. And that would have two effects. One, to reduce the drinking levels, particularly for the most harmful type of drinking, and also to provide more revenue to the state to cover the various programs that are needed to help treat people with alcohol problems.
Earlier this year, Assemblymember Jim Bell introduced a beer tax that he believes could reduce binge drinking and raise nearly $1.5 billion for prevention efforts.
There is a theory that if we increase the tax on alcohol, and it's going to be $2.88 per gallon, that actually reduce the amount of binge drinking because it will increase the cost of alcohol.
Dr. Mitch Katz, director of San Francisco Department of Public Health, believes we have much to learn from the success of recent tobacco taxes.
Absolutely. Increasing taxes has worked extremely well in the tobacco area, where you can show that by increasing taxes, you are able to push down the use of tobacco. And I think the same would be true in the case of alcohol.
We think the alcohol industry is not being held accountable. While California taxpayers, businesses, and the healthcare system are all picking up the tab, the alcohol industry is not paying nearly enough to help cover these costs.
This never-before calculated cost is hard to ignore. No state could sustain this kind of loss indefinitely. It's time to act. Reversing the catastrophe. Marin Institute recommends the California State Legislature hold hearings on reducing this public health and safety problem by considering the following steps. Require annual study on harms and costs caused by alcohol. Fund counties and cities to mitigate and reduce alcohol harm. Curb alcohol industry lobbying and influence. Raise alcohol excise taxes to reduce consumption. Raise fees by implementing an alcohol producer surcharge to cover government programs. For more information, visit marininstitute.org.